Hey everybody, welcome to another BirdTricks Tuesday. I'm Dave Womack.
I'm Jamie Womack. I thought you were gonna do my intro for me.
Nailed it. Well, this is another BirdTricks Tuesday where we're going to be talking about how, we hear all the time that, oh, I can't wait and all I want to do is just get my bird outdoors, and that's always been kind of this like trophy or this end goal, and that end goal is actually the beginning. And as a lot of our free flight students have experienced, the beginning of free flight is at the end of where you think that goal is. So in other words, if you think it's just getting the bird outside, all of a sudden you're a free flyer, it's totally just the beginning. There's that now, that's where your training has to be dialed in and everything has to be really specific, and you have to be on your toes all the time because so much can go wrong. And if you don't continue to really push yourself and learn as much as you can, that's where a lot of those challenges are going to turn around and bite you in the butt.
Yeah, and I think how we've talked about it before is when people have their birds indoors, they think of free flight as like the ultimate I guess, like achievement. And so they're like, oh, I can't wait to get there, almost as if it's the final destination. But what you don't realize until you actually get to that final destination is that you're back at the bottom of the totem pole again. And you're starting over again. And now you're in this whole new world where you have to build back up to be at the top of that new world, if that kind of makes sense. Whereas indoors, and people that have their birds indoors are looking at the outdoor flyers as like, oh, you've reached the ultimate, and they don't realize the work continues. And the work will always continue for outdoor free flyers. It never stops.
Yeah, and there's also this false confidence, as you guys know, we're not the only option to learn how to free fly. There's other options out there. And the challenge is everybody that's gone through the style of course that just says, hey, take your baby bird, cuddle with it all the time, and then it'll recall most of the time. That particular course is great for the first year or two. And as that bird gets older, as now some of our clients have these 1 and 2 year old birds who have done our course, they're realizing like, oh, okay, you really have to continue to step up that education, as we had to learn as well, right? Because we learned with baby birds, and it was very difficult when we transitioned to training Bondi. We realized how much more we didn't know. And so we put in the effort, we put in the time, and we learned that, and we're still learning to this day, and we're learning as much as we can to continue to make it safer, to make it more accessible to more people and to more birds, because as our goal is to save birds one person at a time, that really helps us get there. And so the first topic that I want to go over is better recall. And there's so many different schools of thought on this and I think it all stems from like, what style of training are you going to do? Are you going to do freestyle flying, which is what we do, which we consider more, our background is entertainment based. And so we want our birds to have 100% recall, because if we're in an arena full of 20,000 people, and we need that bird to come to us, no matter how many distractions. We've had pyrotechnics going off, large animals running around. We've had all these amazing
screaming kids, popping balloons, like all those
pyrotechnics, speakers,
those little kitty things that light up and make noises, like those little circus, like, what are they called? They're $1 zillion when you go to buy them, but I'm sure they're like 20 cents at cost.
Yeah.
But they're the most distracting, illuminating, moving, lights going off. It's the most distractions you could possibly have in an area. And I think a lot of people are like, oh, as long as my bird has a really good recall, I can take it outside. And there's so much more to it than that. Like desensitization, confidence building, all these other things play such a huge role.
Yeah, so as you get to the point where you take those first outdoor recalls, that's great. Usually it's with us one-on-one with the students, but sometimes other people do it other ways, and that's fine. But it's important to realize that when you go to a new location, you should treat that location as starting over and go back through those steps. And so these kind of the better recall and starting over when you're flying in new places they're going to play together. So I'll come back to what that looks like when you go to new locations, but keeping in mind that our background is entertainment-based, we demand 100% recall, which to me is the safest. If you're flying a bird outside, it should come back every time you call it the first time, within 2 seconds of you calling, as opposed to at liberty flying, which is so beautiful to experience. My lifestyle doesn't allow for that, because if we have a show the next day 300 miles away, there's no way that I can be like, okay, well, come in. No, you're not coming in. You're going to stay in the tree overnight. Okay, watch out for owls. No? Okay, well, I hope you're alive in the morning because we have a show tomorrow at 9. Right? I can't do that. It doesn't fit my personality. It doesn't fit my lifestyle. But for the people whose lifestyle it fits, it's truly amazing to show up at properties where people have birds flying loose. But that's a different style of training. So with that in mind, this is the direction that we want to take you if you're following our guidance and our training. And we've cautioned people before, like, hey, if you're going to follow a certain type of training, stick with that person's training, because there's so many different dangers that lead you in different directions if you go through different people to help you get there. So, better recall, what does that look like? I require a recall within 1 to 2 seconds of asking the first time. Sometimes you may need to get the bird's attention, right? And people form the habit of saying the bird's name or calling multiple times, because the first 1 or 2 might be getting the bird's attention, and then the third one is the one that actually gets the bird to recall. And what happens is the bird starts to learn, oh, I wait till you call me 3 times, and then that jumps to, well, 4 times, 5 times, 6 times, oh, whenever I want. So when you go through and you're trying to train a very specific recall, you want the best recall possible all the time, the first time, within 1 to 2 seconds. So this is going to be broken down into a few steps. You with me still? Mm-hmm. All right. She just ran her first 5K today. Can you tell?
Yeah, it killed me. I'm like, I'm
but
dead.
Look at this amazing little, I don't know, it's not a trophy, whatever you call it. She earned it, whatever it is. It's plastic.
It's kind of a metal, but it's not actually metal.
It's a rubber medal. So at this point, I want to assume that you've already got your bird doing some sort of flighted behaviors. And we need to just clean that up before we get to an outdoor phase. And that recall should be as if the one perch is here and the other perch is here. You want the bird you want to start at a distance where you know the bird is going to recall to you all the time. And so let's say that's 6 to 8 feet. Keep in mind, if you're too close, the bird may not want to hop to you. And this is so funny. This just happened in a live consult with somebody, with Claudia, actually. I was like, oh, sorry, I'm so sorry, Claudia. You end up as like the example and everything. But I'm like, oh, it looks like you're too close. And she's like, oh, yeah. And so she backs up. And it's such a casual moment in that experience. But we do this all the time too, like the bird's not flying, it's because you're too close, but there's a sweet spot. So if 6 feet's too close, back it up to like 8 feet. So, and it's of course going to vary based on the size of your bird. So whatever that spot is that you know the bird is most likely to fly to you, because it's easy enough that it'll do it for the first time, for treats, all the time, repeated, whatever, you want to go there. So the bird starts on the perch, and you want to wait until the bird ducks down. They all do this like duck and the wings start to twitch out and then they go. So you want to look for that first time where the head ducks, and then as soon as they start to jump, like you know they're coming, right? Then call their name. And so for this it'd be Jinx, right as he's coming. And as soon as not one, but the second foot touches my hand, click. Okay? So I'm giving the click for that behavior, not this, but that, in that exact moment. And I like to relate this again to like picture a flash photographer. That one click that you take sends a flash, takes a picture, captures that exact moment. Did you capture it when the bird was here, or did you capture it when the bird's feet were touching exactly? That's where you should be clicking, as if you were a flash photographer. Very important. It's a minor detail, but it's important. You're clicking, again, the exact second, the exact instant. Then, once the bird's doing that consistently, again, you're waiting for the duck of the head, and you're calling, and click. You might want to do this for 2, 3, 4, 5 sessions, 1 week, until you know 100% of the time that you ask the bird to come, it's coming to you. Then it's time to change up how that's going to work. Because the cue that we want initially is we want the bird to land on our hand. Once we know that that's going to happen, now the behavior is we want you to come the first time we call you within a 2-second window. So you set yourself up exactly as you were before, and you'll start your training session with the head ducks, the wings go out, you give the recall, the bird comes, you click when both feet touch. Now the second recall, you're going to reset it, and you're going to see that head duck, and as soon as, and you'll call, as soon as the bird leaves the perch, as soon as those 2 feet leave, you're clicking. You're no longer clicking when it lands, because this is now assumed. You've already conditioned that this is where you get the treats. So you're getting it where it's the head ducks down, Jinx, click. As soon as he leaves, you click. And then you reinforce with a treat when he's on your hand.
Ready? Coming. Good boy. Yeah, so you're basically now clicking for a faster response to you. So the first behavior was coming to you, and the second behavior that you're now transitioning to is responding to you, but quickly and instantly. So if it takes your bird a few seconds, make sure that you're going for that very quick response. As Dave says, it's so instant. It has to be that exact moment. It has to be that exact moment when the 2 feet touch. It has to be the exact moment that the bird actually responds. So keep those in mind. That's where the money is. It's really, really important to focus on that.
And if you go back to that flash photography idea, the picture you're catching is right as the bird's toes are just barely leaving the perch. That's the moment that you're marking as, that's exactly what I wanted. The key to that is that you say, with your perch up, so you want to get Jinx, 1,000, 2, 1,000, click, right as he flies, he lands, gets the treat here. Then you want to allow the bird to fail and not get the treat. So you set him back. You say Jinx, 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000, 4, 1,000. Then he flies. If it's not within that 2-second window, no click. When he lands here, no treat. You gently, calmly reset him. Wait for his signs where he's going to duck his head and go. Then call him, clicking the moment he leaves the perch. These fails are as important, sometimes more important than the constant wins. Just like in life, you don't realize what you need to improve until you fail. And the birds are very, very tuned into that as well. It's really important.
They're very, very receptive to that. And I think when you follow up a failure with a success is when they really learn, because that's when they are allowed to see the difference. Whereas if you set them up always to succeed and they never have that failure, they aren't actually clear on what exactly you want. They're more likely to mess up when you're least expecting it because it's all gone so smoothly. So when you do set a bird up to set it down and you call it when it doesn't look ready and it doesn't come for those first 5 seconds and then it decides to and you don't treat, it's gonna try to figure out in its mind what was the difference between the behavior that I did that got the treat and the behavior that I did that didn't. And honestly, they're very clever and they pick up on it really quickly.
So an easy way to screw that up is by accidentally reinforcing. And the reinforcement, by now you understand that can be, it could be a treat, that's the obvious one, and that's a natural thing you want to do because, hey, well, the bird did fly to me. Yes, but the bird didn't do exactly the way you wanted it. Okay, so no treat. Other accidental reinforcement might be like, oh, that was a good effort, right? Well, if the bird likes to be pet and likes to be talked to, then that's reinforcing. And so maybe it doesn't have the same treat value as an actual food reward, but it might still have a high value. And with the recent video that we shot, the value came from that owner coming back into the scene and didn't even want a treat. So in that case, the person's presence was higher than the treat value was of the food. So keep in mind that can accidentally get reinforced, which is why I say make sure when the bird does land on you, try to stay calm, relax, chill, just calmly reset the bird. But the important detail that Jamie touched on, and I touched on, but it needs to be elaborated on, is that after a failure, do everything you can to set you and your bird up for success by making sure that the next repetition is a win. So if that last one was a fail, whether it was intentional on you, make it intentionally a win the next time. If it was accidentally because of you, like maybe you set the bird down, you called it before the bird had finished eating the treat, the bird hadn't turned around yet, and you're trying to already call it, first of all, you don't have that bird's eyes locked on you. It's waiting for your cue. So look back at that. And if you make that mistake, the next time you do it, make sure that you've got the bird's attention and you see that hesitation where it ducks its head and it's right before it flies, and then give your recall, click, treat on that moment.
Yeah, and I would just say, especially as, well, not that I haven't seen this in men, I've seen it in some men, but I see it mostly in women, is that we love to talk to our birds. And so, like Dave was saying, we will say like, oh, you didn't quite come fast enough. You were supposed to come on the first call. Like, you waited a little too long, buddy. You're not going to get the treat. And I know that we think that we're communicating all of what I just said to the bird, but birds don't speak English. And so all they're picking up is from our body language and our tone
Condescending?
No, that's not what I was looking for. It's sweet. It's like,
we're being,
it's like an endearing, rewarding sort of thing. It's not like we're like, yeah, you big screw up, you didn't do it. You know, it's not that kind of tone. We're kind of like, oh man, I wish you would have done it right, but you didn't quite get it. So even speaking like that to your bird can be reinforcing and can be rewarding, and you just have to really. When we work on free flight with students, we're very particular about what we're going for, because it's literally the difference between your bird being in danger and your bird being able to safely fly outside. So it's something that I tend to be a little bit more strict about, because I get very worked up about the fact that this is a risk management thing. This can be dangerous to do with your bird. So if you aren't dialed in and going for the utmost awesome behavior as possible and that utter like quick response, then you're putting your bird's life at more risk. And that's what bothers me with people training for free flight, is I want to make sure that risk is minimized as much as possible to be able to be done safely. And so that's kind of where I start to lose my tolerance for certain things, is I want to see it done safely. I want the bird to be as safe as possible, and so I want to make sure people are implementing these techniques as well as possible.
You know, that brings up something I hadn't thought of before, but to tie it to skydiving is all about risk management. I mean, at the end of the day, you're throwing yourself out of an airplane with a backpack with 2 parachutes, hoping that both of them or one of them opens. And it is about risk management. And in the last year, I guess it was in 2018, 8 people worldwide died from skydiving, which was a record low. But in 2018, I know more than 8 birds that died free flying. So if you think about that for a second, what are we doing wrong? Right? When we go through, and I have it right here actually, when we go through to skydive, you check a pin on your reserve, make sure that it's set. You check your main pin for your main canopy, you make sure that's good. This is how you deploy it, so you make sure that that's set right. Then you turn on this little battery pack up here that deploys your reserve if you're unconscious. You do all of that, and there's a million other safety checks, right? But you do all of that to make sure that you are setting yourself up for success and you're managing that risk. And I think that people become very complacent. I've seen it in skydiving too. People become very complacent of, hey, you know what, I've done this 1,000 times, I'm taking my bird out. So what would the safety checks be before you take your bird outside? Is the food motivation accurate to the new situation, right? So for example, and we'll go back into this in a new location, you might need a slightly higher food motivation than you would at your general, normal, everyday place because the bird's confident there. So is the food motivation level correct for that environment? Is
the treat value?
Is the treat value also accurate for that environment and that time of day and your bird's weight? So did you weigh the bird? What kind of meal did it have the night before? Does it fly better after a slight breakfast or no breakfast? Because we have birds that fall into the mix of both. But what, do you have a radio? Like we have 2 radios. Are they charged? Do you have a GPS on the radio? Do you have a GPS on the bird? Is that charged? Is it running? Have you tested it? There's all these safety things that you need to really go through, because now that I'm like thinking about it, as you said it, I'm like, gosh, it is risk management. How come we lost more birds, we as a community, not us personally, how come more birds were lost last year than skydivers, right? Something's wrong.
Yeah, and I think it all comes down to the choices that we make. You need to make sure that you're flying a healthy, capable bird, that if something feels off, you aren't taking your bird out anyways, against that gut feeling. And also you just need to make sure that you're making decisions based on the best interest of your bird and not your ego of, my friend is in town and really wants to see this, or well, it's sunset and I'm going to do it at the beach while it's just certain things need to be thought through. Where is that in the best interest of your bird, or are you just trying to show off to the locals or a friend or a TV producer that's in town or whatever it has to be? I think when people just really reel it in and think, am I making this decision on the best interest of my bird or otherwise? Think about why.
Yeah, and I get the pressure, right? Again, jumping back to this, we're in entertainment. Our birds have to perform, but it's up to us to make sure that they're performing in a safe way. There's, not to call people out because everybody makes mistakes. There was a person who took their birds to a bird show to demo free flight and lost her birds for multiple days. And I don't know the whole story surrounding that, but the easy thing to say is like, well, because there was a fly off, something in that pre-jump checklist was wrong, right? Like she shouldn't have flown the birds that day for whatever reasons, right? And so ideally that person learns from that mistake and doesn't make that again. It could be the training was off, the motivation was off, the location was too new, the birds didn't have time to do a proper recon, there was no like GPS, there was like there's a million
and we've
things.
fallen under the same thing. You know, when we first got a 2-year tour with Ringling, they gave us like the latest time slot to rehearse in the building. And we thought like, okay, we're just going to go for it because that's the time slot we were given. But we didn't give our birds time to adjust onto that time slot to be awake at midnight. Instead, we were just like, let's just do it because this is the time we were given, and up into the rafters they went, you know? And I think that people need to... To bed, yeah. Tusa went to sleep up there. So luckily there were a lot of acrobats around that could throw up a rope and climb up. But if that had been a decision outside, like, oh Lord, you know, so, you know, luckily we were just indoors and it didn't have that bad of repercussions other than us just looking really stupid.
And we couldn't go to bed because the building opened up at 5 a.m. the next day to let in some of the larger animals. We wanted to make sure it didn't commingle with our birds for both safety, right? Of the trainer, with, you know, there's so much going on there.
Yeah, so just making the decision, the correct decisions on behalf of your bird and just making sure that you're making the right ones. It's almost a checklist is necessary, but showing off, I think, is a huge reason that a lot of birds get lost. You know, maybe you fly them in a place that they're just not comfortable with or they're not qualified to be flying at yet, but you don't want to be left out. But you have to think worst case scenario, my bird flies off and I lose it. It's going to make you look a lot worse than, you know, than being like, hey, you know, my bird's not ready for this location. I'm going to wait and just watch everybody else.
And there's
nothing wrong with that.
There's been spots in our shows where we don't do one of the productions with the macaws because the bird doesn't want to do it that day. And I'm not going to force the bird to do that, but it doesn't want to. So I'm not going to make it do that. Same thing with the free flight. Like, with Bondi, we were free flying and we realized, oh, something's off. And so we brought her back in and realized that's what led to the cookbook being developed, is she was sick. And so we were able to spot these things and not try to push it. And so it's just so critical to be paying attention to your bird's weight daily and really questioning and being okay, saying like, you know what, today's not a good day to fly. I don't know why, I'm feeling it. There's been airplanes that I walked off of because I was like, you know, something doesn't feel right, I'm done, I'm going to go home. Like, I don't think anybody should ever have to feel the pressure or succumb to the pressure, which is so easy to do, but like, take the bigger picture. I would much rather see my birds live to fly another day than get them to fly at a level 5 because, you know, National Geographic's coming. They got to see it. Like, hey, you know what? Tough luck, Nat Geo. Like, you got to wait till tomorrow morning.
Yeah, and always remember your relationship. So if maybe your bird was going through something or you did its nails and it got really pissed off the day before, it's probably not the best idea to just go ahead and take it out. You might need to work on a few things first to make sure that your relationship is also on balance, because there's so many different things that play into a well free-flighted bird, and that relationship is key. I mean, if you guys watched my Morgan series, there were times where my relationship got off with Jinx, and we went on that free flight trip and I wanted all my birds to be a part of it so much, and I realized real quick that Jinx was not going to participate with Morgan participating, and so I had to make sure that I needed to go get my relationship back on track with him and give him a few days. So just things to be aware of. There's a balance with your bird being healthy, with the diet being correct, with the food and the treats being correct, with your relationship being correct. There's all these things that play a role, and if they aren't all in balance, then if one thing's off or you're missing one key factor, it throws the entire day off and you really shouldn't go fly.
So let's jump over to flying in new places because it's all relevant. You want to make sure that you're flying once you've got the perfect recall, right? And I guess to finish out that thought, you want to extend the distance once you've got that spot on recall. Then once you're at a spot where the bird's doing fine, and you're outside, you want to go to a new location as if it's day one. So you start with the short A to B recalls, exactly how you did it at home. If it's from a T-stand, bring that T-stand. If it's from a person, bring that person. If it's to a person, bring that person. Set it up how you were last successful in home, or the most consistently successful in your home. And then realize, is there a reason why we shouldn't fly today? Be pessimistic. Like, hey, did it rain yesterday, or is it going to rain later today?
Dave is always the pessimist when I say, like,
Thanks.
hey, I want to go fly. Like, let's do this. Because I'm more of the person to be like, hey, let's do this. And I think I've gotten to the point where I say it even when I know it's not ideal, because I just know he's going to say no all the time. No offense, babe. But most likely he's going to say no, because he's going to look at certain things that I am not. I'm just going to be excited to, like, get the birds outside and be like, hey, it's the first day of spring, let's go for it. And he's like, yeah, it's the first day of spring for the Hawks and Eagles too.
Well, there's so much to that, right? But don't be afraid to turn down the flight day.
Yeah, so, and I think it's better to be the one that thinks things through than the person who just jumps into it. It's better to be married to the person who thinks things through, so that you can be the person that wants to jump into it.
I wouldn't know. Now you're at a new location. What do? You want to set it back up for where you were last successful and start small. And just how when you train a behavior, you take small approximations. Start there. You'll go faster to get to that end result. But start with a short flight and then double it and then triple it. And then make sure that the bird's comfortable in that environment and don't push beyond. If the bird's struggling at double the distance, do double the distance a few more times, or go back to where it wasn't struggling and do that. Because not only are you getting the bird used to the new location, you're also building your bird's confidence in that new location, which is huge. Desensitization and confidence are like a symbiotic relationship, right? You have to build confidence, they have to be desensitized, or to desensitize, you're building confidence. And they happen together. And when you're in these new locations, it's really important to realize that. And in the very beginning, when your bird is a new, like, been free flying for a year or less, you're going to be spending a lot of time desensitizing and building confidence at each location. With every month that passes, you'll have to spend less and less time at each new location, to the point where if you fly consistently, daily or weekly or monthly for that year, you're going to find that you can go to new locations with almost no, like, getting the bird familiar with that location, because they've been used to flying in so many new locations. Their learning curve from not knowing the place, being a need for desensitization and building confidence, that just drops to the point where they're just a confident bird and they can go anywhere, anytime, and do it well.
Yeah, and we saw this a lot with Cressy, because she was our first free-flighted bird. So we would take her places and just do simple A to Bs. And we never asked for anything other than an A to B. We let her make the decision to take those exploratory flights and do those boomerangs and do those flights where they were bigger and larger and more fun to watch. But we never just ran into a new location and threw her into it. We waited and let her decide when she was ready to go and explore that area. And it makes a huge difference for the bird, because not only do they trust you more because they know that you're not just going to throw them into a situation that might freak them out, but they get to choose and be confident and just go and do that thing on their own. And it's so much more fun and rewarding to watch them make that choice than to try to, like, push them into it.
This is making me think, like, because we haven't really talked about the winds a whole lot, we need to do a wind fail video. We should film something for them that just shows very obvious.
Like, understanding wind, because people don't go over it, do they?
Yeah.
We always find that when we teach free flight students, they know nothing about wind. And even when we go flying with other free flyers who have taken other courses, they have no idea about wind. And it blows our mind that, it? Blows our mind. It blows our mind literally that it's not, like, nobody else teaches about it, because it's a huge, it impacts the entire everything. It impacts the entire thing. Like, we can go to locations now and I'm like, nah, it's not worth flying here because there's either no wind or there's too much wind, you know? Like, there's a balance between certain locations being so much more fun with wind or not worth flying at because there's no wind. It's like, nah, this is not gonna be fun.
Yeah.
So when you get to a certain level, wind plays a role no matter what level you're at. But when you get to certain levels, it really makes or breaks the day sometimes.
It's like taking off an airplane with a tailwind. You just shouldn't do it.
Yeah. So we'll definitely make a video about wind. Let us know what you guys would like for these BirdTricks Tuesdays. We're keeping them flight related because there was so much interest in flight. We have a lot of our free flight students that are on our Patreon, and that they always appreciate the reminders and just kind of us going into it. So if the flight topics still interest you, please let us know if there's any specifics that you want us to dive into. Otherwise, we're going to keep going on this path, and I think next month it's going to go into random rewarding, which is an amazing topic, not just for flight, but for everyday everything, no matter what you're training, it applies to all of it. So understanding random rewarding is going to be the key to happiness.
There's some truth to that.
So thank you guys so much for joining us today on BirdTricks Tuesdays, and we will see you next month.
Woo, woo, woo.